Hi, I'm Rowena. My sister and her friends thought it would be funny to leave me stranded in the middle of Utah with no phone, no wallet, no ride home. But what hurts more than being left behind is realizing they planned it, laughed about it, filmed it, and when I told my family, they said I was just being dramatic, so I stayed quiet. But what if the real story, my story, deserved to be heard? What else did they think was funny? They said it would be a bonding trip, just the four of us, me, Bryn, Leora, and Astria, driving from Arizona into Utah for a long weekend of hikes, spa days, and quality time. Bryn pitched it like an olive branch after months of cool tension. I didn't believe it for a second, but I went. Because despite everything, she's still my sister. The sun was already baking the road when we pulled into that gas station just outside Green River. Bryn needed an iced coffee, and I had to pee. Leora made a crack about not letting me near the aux cord this time, and Astria didn't even look up from her phone. Same energy as always, smiles that didn't reach their eyes, laughter that never included me. Inside, I tried to shake it off, used the restroom, splashed some water on my face. When I came out, the parking lot felt oddly empty. I turned to the left where the SUV had been parked near the ice machine. It wasn't there. For a second, I actually smiled. They were just messing with me again, like they used to back in high school, probably hiding around the corner, watching me freak out for their own amusement. Bryn always had a talent for that, turning me into the punchline of her life. 5 minutes passed. Then 10. I paced by the payphone, glancing toward the road. The trucker who'd been refueling earlier drove off with a nod. I stood in the heat, still holding my receipt for a granola bar. My phone, charger, and wallet were all still in the car, left there because we were just stopping for a quick break. By minute 15, I knew. They weren't coming back. The first thing I felt wasn't anger. It was embarrassment. That deep, sickening sort that starts in your throat and sinks to your gut. I looked around as if someone else might have seen it, witnessed how my own sister had left me behind like a forgotten grocery bag. A man in a denim jacket approached slowly from the shade of the vending machines. "Everything okay, ma'am?" he asked, in that cautious voice people use with women who might burst into tears. "I think they left me," I said. I hadn't meant to say it out loud, but the words escaped. He offered me his phone. I thanked him and tried not to let my hands shake too much as I dialed Bryn's number. It rang once and went to voicemail. I didn't leave a message. I switched to our group chat. My name had been removed from location sharing. The last message from Leora was a selfie, her grinning in the front seat, captioned, "Sister Detox Day begins." I swallowed hard and kept scrolling. That's when I saw it. A story. Leora again, laughing into the camera, with Bryn in the background, smirking. "She'll figure it out," Leora said, then winked. She always does. I handed the phone back to the man and muttered a thank you. He asked if I needed a ride, or to call someone else. I shook my head. No one else is coming. I walked back behind the gas station, where a metal bench sat against the wall, half in shadow. The heat rose from the pavement like it had weight. I sat down and stared at the road, letting the silence settle around me. What hurt the most wasn't the heat, or the uncertainty, or even the public humiliation. It was the clarity, the final irreversible proof that I had never belonged, not to them, not even to her. So this is what I am to them, a joke. The light was starting to stretch long across the concrete when I finally stood up from the bench. My skin was sticky with sweat, my back sore from sitting so stiffly. The trucker had come back out of the store with a cold bottle of water and handed it to me without a word. I took it. I hated that I needed it, but I took it. He gestured toward his phone again, which he'd left on the dashboard. "Want to try someone else?" I nodded. There was no one else, but I knew what he meant. I opened the passenger door, sat down slowly, and dialed Mom. The ring felt louder than it should have. 4 beats, then 5, then her voice. "Hello?" Relief hit so suddenly I almost forgot what to say. "Mom," I breathed. "It's me." "Rowena? Where are you calling from?" I explained quickly. "Gas station, outside Green River. No car, no phone, no money." I kept it simple, stripped of anything that might sound dramatic. There was a pause. Then she exhaled, long and sharp. "I just got off the phone with Bryn," she said. "She told me you stormed off during the trip. Again. My mouth opened, but nothing came out for a second. Stormed off. I was left here. They drove away. She said you got upset about something small. You've done that before. Mom, my phone, my wallet, they were in the car. Why would I leave everything and just walk away? Another pause, then, you're not always careful, Ro. Maybe you forgot to bring your things. It's not unheard of. My knuckles whitened around the phone. Are you serious right now? I'm just saying. Bryn sounded really shaken. She said she tried to find you, but you were gone. I sat there stunned. The heat outside felt like nothing compared to the burn inside my chest. She planned this, I said quietly. They laughed about it. They posted a video. Mom's voice dropped lower. Don't be dramatic. She's your sister. She loves you. I almost laughed. I wanted to, just to have something come out. She left me on the side of the road. You can be hard to deal with sometimes, she said, soft but firm. You know that. There it was, the same old record playing again. Ever since I was little. You're too sensitive, Rowena. Don't make such a big deal. You always take things the wrong way. I leaned back, letting the seat press into my spine. She's not the victim here. She's stressed. Maybe you could just apologize, clear the air. That was it. That was when the call ended. Not because she hung up, but because I did. I didn't slam the phone down. I didn't yell. I just slowly hit the red button and handed the phone back to the man beside me. He didn't ask how it went. He didn't need to. I stepped back outside into the fading sunlight. The horizon stretched flat and unforgiving. The sky was a watercolor of burnt orange and dusty blue, but none of it felt beautiful. They really believed her. They think this is my fault. I walked back to the bench. The seat was still warm from earlier. I sat down and stared straight ahead. No new texts, no voicemails, no location sharing. Just my name scrubbed clean from the trip like I'd never been on it. The last words my mother said to me before I hung up rang in my ears, quiet but surgical. You always make things harder than they need to be. I dropped the phone into my lap. The screen stayed lit, taunting me in that soft blue glow. The sun was long gone by the time I pulled the jacket tighter around me. It had been hours since that last call, the one that scraped away whatever thin layer of hope I had left. The bench outside the gas station was still warm from the day's heat, but the air had cooled. I sat there, watching trucks roll past in the dark like slow-moving giants, their taillights fading into a blur. I'd tried booking a bus. No route came through Green River until the following night. Uber didn't exist here. The trucker had already taken off, heading east before I could even ask for another favor. My emergency card? That was back in the car, tucked neatly into a side pocket of my makeup bag. Useless. I leaned my head against the wall and stared up at the sky. Utah was quiet in a way that made you hear your own thoughts a little too clearly. There weren't any more calls to make. No numbers to dial. I didn't even know what I would have said. Sometime after midnight, I moved to the side of the building where there was less light, less noise. I curled up on the concrete with the jacket balled beneath my head and tried to ignore the ache in my back, the burning in my throat. Sleep came in pieces. At sunrise, the cold faded and the sweat came back. The air was dry and my lips were cracked when I woke. I stretched slowly, my muscles tight from the awkward position. People passed by the station, drivers, delivery men, early travelers, but none looked my way. I didn't blame them. I wouldn't have either. The woman inside the gas station let me use the phone again after I offered to sweep the floor. I sat on the curb out front and pulled up my bank's website. Access denied. I stared at the screen for a long time, blinking hard before refreshing. Again, error. Account frozen. I called the number listed on the back of the card. The customer service agent, cheerful and robotic, informed me that the secondary account holder, my mother, had requested a temporary block for security purposes. No further information could be disclosed without her consent. My breath caught somewhere in the middle of my chest. She did this. She cut me off. I thanked the woman behind the register, left the phone where I found it, and walked a block down to a diner I'd seen the night before. The windows were fogged from the kitchen heat. I stepped inside and asked to use the restroom. A man behind the counter didn't even glance up. Restrooms are for paying customers. I nodded, turned around, and left. Back outside, I made my way behind the diner and sat down on a concrete divider. My jeans stuck to my legs with sweat. My hands rested on my knees, but I couldn't unclench them. The world wasn't crashing down. It had already crashed. Now I was just sitting in the debris. I remembered being 17, dressed for a family gathering, getting pulled aside by my mom for embarrassing everyone with my mood. I hadn't said a word at the dinner. I had just sat quietly. That was enough. "You're making a scene without even opening your mouth," she'd said. That was the theme, wasn't it? Me, being too much and not enough at the same time. I pressed my fingers to my temples and stared at the dusty gravel. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It wasn't a mix-up or a joke that went too far. They planned this. They planned to make me nothing. My stomach growled, loud and sharp. I ignored it. I didn't even know how long it had been since I ate. Hours? A full day? I wouldn't call them. Not now. Not tonight. Not even if this stretched into another day, another week. They wanted silence. They could have it. The sky darkened again, slower this time. I curled up back on the bench near the station, this time pulling the jacket over my face. It smelled faintly of old cologne and dust. I didn't cry. Just before I drifted off, a single cold drop of rain tapped against my cheek. Morning light was already cutting across the gravel when I stirred. My back ached from the bench, and the jacket had slipped off during the night, leaving me colder than I remembered. I sat up slowly, still groggy, and ran my hand through my hair. The gas station had started to come alive, cars idling, doors slamming, voices rising. Another day in motion for everyone but me. Craig, the barista from the little coffee trailer parked next to the station, noticed me standing nearby. He handed me a paper cup without a word. The smell of bitter roast pulled me from the fog. I muttered a thank you, voice hoarse. He just nodded and went back to steaming milk. Inside the gas station, the cashier let me charge the phone again. I hadn't turned it on since the night before. I didn't expect anything. No texts, no missed calls. But I opened Instagram anyway. Old habit. It took a moment to load. Then her face filled the screen. Bryn, makeup lightly smudged, voice trembling in a video posted just a few hours earlier. She was crying. "Please," she said to the camera, "if anyone sees my sister, tell her to come home. We're all worried. She disappeared." My mouth went dry. Below the video was a photo of us as kids. Birthday hats, frosting on our cheeks. Me smiling up at her like she was everything. My name wasn't even tagged. I scrolled through the comments. Hundreds of them. "You're such a good sister." "This is heartbreaking." "She'll come around. Family fights are tough." A few even sent her prayers. One woman posted a quote about never giving up on those we love. It wasn't real. None of it was real. I sat down on the curb, just outside the coffee trailer, and stared at the screen. I didn't cry. Not then. I just felt hollow. As if I'd left my body and was watching it all from the outside. Bryn didn't want me found. She wanted to be praised. I closed the app and pulled the journal from my backpack. The pen felt heavier than usual. I opened to a blank page and started writing, not the surface-level updates, but the things I hadn't said aloud. The moment they pulled away, the sound of Leora laughing, the way the bench felt against my spine when I realized they weren't coming back. I kept writing until my hand cramped. Then I paused, hearing a voice from memory, Bryn's, crisp and full of disdain. "You don't know how to handle the spotlight, Rowena, so stay out of it." She'd said that to me 2 years ago when I refused to smile through one of her networking events. I'd told her I didn't feel like performing that night. She'd whispered it in my ear as if it were advice, not a warning. I glanced at the journal again. I could post my side, spill it all, show them the truth behind her tears. But I didn't have proof, no footage, no receipts, just a few messages that could be framed either way. She had the first word, and the public, by default, had sided with her. I muttered aloud, they weaponized kindness, and it worked. So I didn't post. I didn't delete her either. Instead, I flipped to the last page of my journal and underlined a sentence I'd written without realizing how true it was. "I won't speak, not yet, but I won't be erased either." I sat there as the wind picked up, flipping the pages of my notebook like it was eager to get to the end. And when the sun climbed high enough to blind me, I closed the cover and whispered, "I'll collect the truth piece by piece, then I'll show them." The sun was already climbing when I stepped through the shelter's back entrance, a threadbare backpack slung over my shoulder, and a dull weight still sitting in my chest. Delphine met me with a nod and a warm plate, eggs, toast, and canned peaches. I didn't say much. I hadn't since arriving the night before. She showed me to a narrow cot in a quiet room and left without another word. On the wall above my bed was a faded photo of a young woman with dark curls and a laugh caught mid-breath. It looked like a snapshot from a fair or a street carnival. There was something achingly familiar about her. I would later learn she was Delphine's daughter, gone now, but never put down. That morning, I barely touched my food. My body wanted rest, but my brain kept spinning. The journal rested on the windowsill beside the bed, my pen still lodged between the pages. The words from yesterday circled in my head like they were branded there. I'll collect the truth piece by piece. I didn't know how yet, but I knew why. Later that afternoon, I walked down the block to the public library. It was small, quiet, and half empty. I asked to use one of their phones and sat in a cubicle for a few minutes before pressing the green call button. It rang and rang. Then, "Hello? Mom, it's me." A beat of silence. "Rowena, I figured you'd call eventually." My mouth tightened. "I'm in Moab, at a shelter." She didn't ask why. "Have you calmed down?" "Calmed down?" I repeated. "Mom, they left me in the middle of Utah." "That's not what Bryn told me," she said flatly. I exhaled slowly, biting back the instinct to raise my voice. "Bryn lies, Mom. She lied to you. They laughed about it. There's video." "She said you got overwhelmed, that you didn't want to be there and you left. You've done that before, Ro." I swallowed hard. I had no money, no phone. Everything was in the car. She was trying to protect the family from drama. My hand started to shake. I pressed it flat to the desk. "You think abandoning me is protecting anyone?" There was a pause on her end. Then she said the thing I'll never unhear. "Family first doesn't always mean you." My stomach dropped. Not because it was new, but because she finally said it out loud. My voice went low, steady. "If you don't believe me now, don't ask for me later." I hung up before she could respond. Back at the shelter, I sat in the common room with a legal pad and began to transcribe what had just happened. Word for word. My pen moved fast, angry, deliberate. Then I recorded it, not for proof, just for me. "My name is Rowena. I was left on the side of a highway by my sister. My mother believes her over me. This is what that sounds like." I paused the recording and stared at the mic icon on the screen. I didn't feel sorry for myself. I felt clear. That night, Delphine brought in a small photo frame and quietly set it beside my cot. It was the same girl from before. She looked around my age, full of life. I caught her name, Melanie, written in faded ink on the corner. "She hated being ignored," Delphine said softly. She used to say, "If they silence me, I'll just get louder." I nodded, but didn't reply. When the lights dimmed, I sat on my cot, pulled out my journal, and underlined my own words twice. I'm not going to be their punchline anymore. Then, closing the book and setting it aside, I said it aloud for the first time. If they push again, I push back. It had been 2 days since I'd last called my mother, and even longer since I'd bothered explaining myself. I kept thinking that silence would cool everything down. Maybe time would stir guilt in the right places. I was wrong. In the shelter's cafeteria, I sat at the far corner with a donated tablet Delphine had loaned me. It had a cracked screen and the kind of lag you learn to work around. I used it to check job boards, email, bus schedules, anything that would make me feel like I still had some sort of plan. This time, though, I typed my own name into the search bar. What came up made my skin prickle. There were screenshots, comments, people tagging each other, gossiping like they knew the full story. One thread in particular caught my attention. A series of text messages, mine, out of context, edited, chopped into something ugly. Phrases like, "I can't take her anymore," and "it's not worth being around them," floating above my name, framed in bright red circles. Bryn had posted them with the caption, "We tried, but sometimes people don't want help. The comments were brutal. She sounds unstable. You can't fix crazy. Bryn, you're so strong for putting up with her. I stared at the screen, my mouth dry. I didn't recognize the person those words belonged to, not the one they made me out to be. But instead of slamming the tablet shut or crying, I opened a folder and started saving everything. Screenshots, post links, even usernames. I wasn't going to be caught unprepared again. That evening, I sat on my cot, scrolling through another wave of sympathy posts. That's when I saw it. A photo from our childhood, Bryn and me in front of a birthday cake, frosting smeared across my face while she stood pristine beside me. The caption read, "Wish she'd remember who we used to be." Thousands of likes. I knew the photo. I remembered the moment. She had pushed the cake into my face right after the camera flashed. But no one knew that part. They didn't need to. The damage had been done. I closed the tablet and walked out into the hallway. The overhead lights buzzed faintly as I leaned against the cool brick wall. I could scream my side of the story, shout into the void. But Bryn had already choreographed the narrative, polished it, fed it to the world wrapped in soft sorrow. They weren't ready to hear me yet. Not the truth, not raw. But I would be ready when they were. I spent the next morning organizing my journal pages. I dated them, numbered them, stapled them into sections. Before, during, after. Then I started compiling a separate timeline, exact locations, texts I remembered, things said, things I hadn't had the courage to write down until now. Delphine came by with a shoebox in her hands. She didn't say anything, just set it beside me and walked away. Inside were half a dozen old mini recorders. Some still had batteries. A few had scraps of labels still stuck to them, her daughter's handwriting. It took me a moment to understand. Then it all clicked. If I couldn't speak publicly yet, I could still record. I could still document. I could still preserve what was real. I set one of the recorders on the table and pressed the button. "My name is Rowena," I said quietly, "and this is what they don't want you to know." I spoke for 20 minutes straight. No script, no edits, just the truth. It came out raw and sometimes cracked, but it was mine. Later that night, back in my room, I set up a new file on the tablet. Audio log #1 title. Day 1, The Lie They Told. I uploaded it to a private drive and stared at the blinking bar until the file turned green. No one would hear it yet, but it existed now. Somewhere, it lived. I looked out the window, my voice echoing in the recorder still running. They made me silent in public, but I will echo in private until I roar. The email came at 9:42 p.m. I was sitting in the shelter lounge, finishing a cup of instant coffee and reviewing the timeline I'd been building on my notepad. The subject line hit me like a jab to the ribs. "You're not the only one." I stared at it for a while before opening it. The sender's name was a jumble of letters, no profile photo. There was no message in the body, just a single video attachment. I hesitated before tapping it, heart kicking into gear. The screen lit up with a shaky handheld video. Poor lighting, familiar voices. It took a second, but then I saw her. Bryn, sitting cross-legged on the floor of a rustic cabin, wine glass in hand, Leora beside her laughing through her nose. Okay, Bryn said, waving her hands. "So here's the plan. We stop for gas, she goes to pee, and we drive." Astria's voice from behind the camera. "She'll freak." "She needs to," Bryn smirked. "She'll learn." Laughter erupted. I paused the video before I could hear more. My chest felt hollow. It wasn't just negligence. It wasn't miscommunication. It was planned. And it was filmed. I closed the tablet and sat there, breathing like I was learning how for the first time. For a brief moment, I felt like throwing the device across the room. Instead, I hit save. 2 days later, I stood behind the podium at a community event hosted by the Moab Women's Center. They'd invited me to speak briefly about navigating family estrangement, especially when support systems break down. It was a small gathering, folding chairs, donated coffee, and a sense of shared scars. I hadn't planned to speak, but Delphine nudged me gently and whispered, "If you don't speak in this room, you'll never know what it feels like to be heard." So I stood up. I kept it short, just enough for them to understand how betrayal sometimes came wearing lipstick and pearls. I talked about silence, about gaslighting, about the shame that builds when no one wants your version of the story. People were listening. I could see it in the way their shoulders dropped, how a few nodded slowly. Until it happened. From the back row, a voice broke the rhythm. I was there. Everyone turned. A woman in a tailored blazer stood up. Isolde, one of Bryn's oldest friends. Her tone was confident but sweet, like someone trying to clarify rather than accuse. She didn't get left behind, Isolde said. She walked off. She couldn't handle some honest feedback and vanished. The room turned cold. I stood frozen at the podium, heartbeat ringing in my ears. Odette, the event coordinator, looked unsure, half rising from her chair, then sitting back down. I didn't respond. Not because I was afraid, but because I knew it would mean nothing here. Not yet. I left the room quietly, my voice folded and tucked back into my chest. That night, in my shared room at the shelter, I pressed record. Today I was called a liar in a room built for survivors. And I stayed silent, not out of shame, but because the truth doesn't need to fight in every arena. I opened the video again, watched the part where Bryn said, "She needs to. She'll learn." I stared at the screen and whispered, "I don't need to speak louder. I just need to be heard in the right place." Then I did something I hadn't done yet. I forwarded the video file to 3 journalists. 1 local, 1 regional, 1 national. No note, no commentary. I just hit send. I didn't sleep the night I hit send. I lay on my cot staring at the ceiling, replaying the video in my head. Not the one I'd just forwarded, but the original unfiltered footage that had lit the match. Every word, every laugh, every second of Bryn's voice dripping with condescension was etched behind my eyelids. The truth was finally out of my hands. That's what terrified me the most. At sunrise, I walked down to the Moab Public Library. They opened at 8. I was there at 7:50, waiting on the steps with a stale protein bar in my jacket pocket, and my heart racing like I was about to take an exam I hadn't studied for. By 9:30, the first headline appeared. Sister left behind. Private video reveals calculated family prank. I clicked. It was a mid-level independent outlet based out of Denver. Their reporter had posted the video alongside my first audio entry. The article wasn't sensational. It was surgical. Quotes pulled from the video, transcripts from the log. The story painted a picture of cruelty wrapped in performative concern. The comment section exploded. Some people doubted it. Others demanded more proof. But then came the flood. Strangers expressing shock, anger, sympathy. One woman wrote, "They left her like luggage, and now they're mad the suitcase talks." I couldn't breathe. I leaned back in the chair and stared at the ceiling, blinking fast. I wasn't invisible anymore. But not everything shifted with that article. Later that afternoon, I checked my email. Among the junk and password reset attempts sat one message with a subject line that froze my hand mid-air. "Regarding your internship application?" I opened it. Polite, formal. A nonprofit I'd applied to a month earlier rescinded their offer. They cited unexpected concerns about online controversy and thanked me for my interest. I read it 3 times. Then I laughed. It wasn't bitter. It was quiet, tired, like a reflex. I pulled out my journal and wrote, "Losing one door doesn't close the truth." After dinner at the shelter, I walked outside to call my mother. Not to explain, not to beg, just to end the loop. She didn't pick up. I texted her a single link, to the article, nothing else, and turned the phone off. The next morning, Bryn's Instagram story went up. A photo of a lake. Caption, "Be careful what stories you believe." No apology, no denial, just a thin, glossy veil of victimhood. But something had shifted. Her followers didn't rally. No hearts, no "so brave" messages. Just quiet. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Instead, I took the bus to the county courthouse. I walked in, asked for the clerk, and told her I needed to file a formal complaint for emotional damages. It was awkward. It was overwhelming. But it was real. She gave me the forms. I filled them out on a bench, my pen steady, my fingers no longer trembling. I reviewed every box before signing my name at the bottom. Rowena Sloan. It was the first time in weeks that writing my name felt like reclaiming something. On my way out, the wind picked up just enough to pull my hood back. The air felt clearer than it had in days. As I stepped through the courthouse doors, my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "I saw everything. I believe you." The message stayed pinned at the top of my screen for a while before I opened it. "I saw everything. I believe you." I didn't recognize the number, but the name that followed in the next line made my breath pause. Mylis. She'd been one of Bryn's extras years ago. Quiet, unassuming. Always there in the corners of photos, never in the captions. I hadn't heard her name in nearly a decade. When I wrote back, her reply was immediate. "Let's talk. Coffee's on me." That afternoon, I met her at a small cafe 2 blocks from the shelter. She wore her hair tied back, no makeup, and greeted me like we hadn't just reconnected over a shared betrayal. We didn't talk small, we didn't bother pretending. She told me her story over 2 cups of coffee, how she had been chewed up and spit out by Bryn's circle after a harmless disagreement, how it had followed her, quietly, destructively, through college and into her first job. She had tried to warn people, but the response was always the same. "She's your sister. Maybe you misunderstood." I nodded, not because I needed to agree, because it was the first time I didn't feel like the only one gasping for air in a story that was being rewritten without me. When we parted, she gave me something simple. "You don't have to finish the whole fight," she said, "just the part you were written out of." Later that evening, I reopened the same childhood photo Bryn had used to decorate her performance. The one with the frosting and the fake smiles. I cropped it tighter, zoomed in on my eyes, red and puffy from crying before the party even started, and added my own caption. "She told the story. I lived it." I didn't tag anyone, didn't point fingers. I just posted it with a soft link to my audio journal and turned off the comments. The next day, my voice echoed beneath the post in the form of a recorded message. "I'm not healed, but I'm no longer hiding." I didn't need applause, and truthfully, I wasn't expecting any. But silence followed, and from Bryn, that was louder than any defense. There were no public denials, no passive-aggressive stories, no damage control from her usual crew. The noise had stopped. Whether it was shame, exhaustion, or strategy, I didn't care. The stillness was a kind of victory. Midweek, I received a letter from the county office. My emotional damages claim had been marked under active review. It wasn't much, but it meant someone had to read what I wrote. Someone had to listen. A few days later, Delphine helped me find a studio apartment above a laundromat. It was tiny, 1 room, 1 squeaky ceiling fan, but it had a lock and a key and a window that faced the sunrise. She also connected me with a local podcaster who needed help editing. It wasn't much money, but it felt good to work with sound again, to make something clean out of something messy. One evening after work, I walked down the same highway I'd been stranded on weeks ago. The gas station hadn't changed. Same flickering sign, same dusty parking lot. But I had. I stood there for a minute, sipping a warm drink, watching families pass through, unaware of the weight that corner once held for me. Some people never say sorry. Some wounds stay tender, but healing is when they stop controlling the story. As I reached the top of the stairs to my new apartment, my phone buzzed. A voicemail from Bryn. "Hi, it's Bryn. Sometimes the hardest truth to accept is that family isn't always the safest place to land. I spent years twisting myself into someone I thought they'd love, someone easy to handle, someone quiet enough to keep around. But healing started the day I stopped begging to be seen and started standing in my own name. If you've ever felt erased, misunderstood, or left behind by the people who were supposed to love you first, know this, your story matters. You don't have to scream to be heard. You just have to stop hiding. What about you? Have you ever had to rewrite your own story to reclaim your voice? Drop a 1 in the comments if this resonated with you, or tell me where you're watching from. If it didn't hit home, tell me why. Let's talk. Let's connect. And if this story moved you, don't forget to subscribe. More true, powerful stories are on the way.